with the first session of the day, and we'll start with a spotlight on Asia. We are very happy to be doing this in collaboration with AVPN, our close partners and friends. This is a practitioner-led session on local insights, global impact, leveraging collaboratives for change. It explores the opportunity in leveraging diverse and local resources, expertise, and strategies while designing actionable pathways to address intricate issues like inequity at scale, dearth of agency, and much more that shapes the region. I'd like to call upon Moutushi Sengupta, Chief of Capital Mobilization at AVPN and a close friend of Dasara, to inaugurate the panel and to introduce the panelists. You can just sit there and I can video here.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me at the back? All right, great, fantastic. So it's the first session of the day. We come with a lot of expectations, and we hope that the panel is able to answer some of the questions that our friends from the civil society have raised for us. No pressure, really. And but they're big questions, and thank you, Deval, to bring the spotlight back on the community as a whole. Really very privileged to be working with everybody here. So I've got a really, really rich panel as such, and I would like to invite them to come and talk to us and about their journeys. The focus of this particular session, as Akshay has mentioned, is largely looking at lived experiences. We would like to understand how do collaborative approaches work from the lived experiences of our panelists, but we'll hear more about it as we move forward. So first and foremost, I will call upon Seema. Seema actually Seema Paul, she is part of the Sequoia Climate Foundation. She heads the climate program for India and Brazil. I have had the privilege of working with Seema on several occasions, and really, really deeply moved by the experience that she brings. Thank you, Seema, for joining us. Next, Aniket. Aniket Doegar, many of you in this room know about his work, about his journey, and he will tell us more about how he went forward with his collaborative journey. Thank you for coming over, Aniket. And lastly, not in any way less in importance, Sana Mustafa. She heads an organization called Asylum Access, and I really can't wait to have her share her journey on the work that she does. Tremendous amount of experience in working with different groups in Asia, but very, very unique as well. Thank you very much. So I will start. Do you have the phone? So just wanted to start out with a very, very short answer from each of you, just a line in to tell us, what is it that really, really gets you excited to go to do the work that you do. I know we all get very driven by the work that we are all engaged in, but to get the personal perspectives of these three people sitting here in the panel, Seema, do you want to kick us off on that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here. And I must commend Dasra for picking this title, South-South Collaboration. It sort of aligns with the frustration I've been experiencing in the last few years about how India has so many solutions to offer to the world that come from civil society. And maybe because the problems are so vexed, we choose to work deeply internally and don't leverage the power of South-South collaboration. I'm so delighted that finally India has had its moment with G20 leadership, and Prime Minister Modi has demonstrated the power of South-South collaboration in driving multilateralism through that forum. Whatever our political views might be, I think it's a moment to be proud of. And I think that the civil society needs to replicate the same. So the timing may be just it may be a coincidence, but I do want to reinforce the title of this event and commend Dasra for that. Now for the single sentence response on what gets me excited. I think we have a unique opportunity to make a huge difference to a lot of the people, the poor people of the world. no matter wherever, what our station in life, where we are. And for me, it is just, that fantastic opportunity that I have as somebody who was born and raised in India, but works in an international philanthropy, and the power to be able to leverage the dollar or the investment of capital to drive large-scale change in India. That's very empowering and a mission of a lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seema. I mean, truly, it is a privilege and also an imperative that, we get to work with communities like this. Thank you. Sana, if I can come to you, tell us, what drives you to work every morning.
I think it's, yeah. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to New York. What gets me excited to do the things I do is really the idea of the ability to shift power and resources where they should be. So the redistribution of wealth and power through solutions and movements that's led by those with the lived experience and grassroots is really what gets me excited about doing the work that we're doing, and doing that in collaborations and collaboratives and partnerships, especially South to South. And this is what we will be talking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Aniket.
So I think, and firstly, thank you for having me here. But I think at Haqdarshak in India, we are trying to work on unlocking social security benefits for low-income families. So I think the magic that is happening in India right now, because India is an assisted tech country. Anything that you do in India, whether it's financial inclusion, health, anything to do with digital is assisted tech. You need to build for the champions in communities to reach communities. So I think that magic that happens every day of the digital phenomenon that India is building in terms of digital public infrastructure and technology mixed with the grassroots women agents that we work with at Haqdarshak and many other organizations here work with. I think that combination that I see every day and the impact that it is creating, that's something that gets me really excited. And also I see that's a huge opportunity, because there is a part of India which is building fantastic technology, and there is part of India which is now beginning to use it. But like I said, we really need to build for those champions in communities to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So Seema, just to go back to what you just mentioned, that, bringing the spotlight back to the South, and I really like the way the title was worked out to say South by South and South as well. So I just wanted to, I know there has been such deep experience of working with various communities in your own journey as such. Could you just tell us about our collaborative approach a little bit in terms of which actually went on to solve a global challenge, or at least contributed to resolving that, and which cut across country borders, and where you are able to demonstrate evidence of movement and change, positive change going forward.
Thank you. So it will go back to this point about the digital, age that we are living in. So first of all, the challenge that I will, highlight is the one of climate change. And within climate change, that several countries have disproportionate impact because of their high emissions. So Brazil is number 5 or 6 in terms of its ranking on the emissions that it's contributing, and that's driving climate change. And Brazil is also very important because from a climate perspective, because it is home to a very large chunk of the Amazon forest. And the Amazon rainforest is one of the tipping points in climate change. So a tipping point in climate change is something that will have a disproportionate and irreversible impact on climate. So from the current philanthropy that I work at, Sequoia Climate Foundation, not related to Sequoia Capital in any way at all, There's a lot of confusion around that, so I just want to clarify. It's a plain old vanilla philanthropy. We make grants on issue of climate mitigation. So we have been working with Brazil, and specifically we have supported a partner called Map Biomass. As the name implies, they are mapping out biomass. And in this digital age, there has been rapid movement in terms of being able to capture what is happening to the ground forest at scale, because you're able to leverage these images now, and the images are able to be close enough that you can tell that an act of deforestation has occurred here or there, or which part of the Amazon forest. So a leader who is currently in New York visiting from the Forestry Department of Brazil, Tasso Azevedo, he came up with this idea that he will unite the civil society working on the biodiversity issue in Brazil and leverage these information technologies to start mapping the state of biomass in the country. And he will do it in a way that the all the things that the government needs to take punitive action against the violators would be available. So he wanted to develop this tool, and we supported that tool development over the last several years. And then Tasso also had this vision that he wanted to take this tool to other developing countries. He was very interested in taking it to DR Congo, to other Latin American countries, and to Indonesia. And as you know, Indonesia also has a wealth of forests, and is also where that forest needs to be conserved, I should say, for the benefit of the local people as well as for the global climate. So he took that idea to Indonesia. He rallied the civil society to understand this tool and to decide whether they would want to leverage it and use it in some fashion. They would need to develop their own map biomass, but he took the idea to them, and it has been a phenomenal success. In my experience of more than 4 decades, it's one of the rare examples where a solution set in one southern country has been put to good use by a civil society actor, or rather a set of actors in another country. I'll share more details as needed later on, but this is one of the examples that I am most inspired by. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just bringing us back to the fact that often the development challenges that we are dealing with don't really coincide with the national boundaries. And so we do need solutions which go on to which cut across national boundaries and figure out how best to tackle them. With that, I'd like to actually bring the spotlight back to Aniket. His is a very unique journey within India. Aniket, if you could tell us very succinctly in terms of what your journey has been, what prompted you to get into that space to be actually trying to find solutions?
So I actually was kind of looking at the space of information asymmetry, largely that citizens are not aware of the different government programs that they're eligible for. And back in 2014, 15, when I was thinking about this idea, I think all the work leading up to that, working in different foundations, was actually to build up my resume to actually get into probably Harvard at back then, or Oxford, because I had no intention to start an organization or even be in India. But the thing that really bothered me was, even back then, the kind of information gap that was there. So initially the idea was to set up a digital platform for people to access. Quickly, like I mentioned earlier on, I learned that just building a platform and reaching the kind of people you want to reach is not enough. How do you really ensure that the information and that platform also reaches them? And that's how the journey of Haqdarshak began. We were one of the first platforms in India to build a rules engine, which essentially maps the profile of citizens to government schemes, created a repository. By the way, in India, there are 20,000 government schemes. The annual budget for these government programs is 10% of our GDP, out of which a majority goes into food security, fertilizer subsidy, loans, and then direct cash transfers. And this impacts close to 900 million people out of 1.4. So it is by far the largest social security program in the world. It is also very unique because being a democracy and a federal structure, every state has a different program, a center has its own programs. You could be running a program in India and in a particular state, then that program would not be running. They would have a different program with a different name. So it is unique, it is rules based because the rules are linked to caste, income, domicile, your different profile, your occupation. So mapping all of that was the first part of the journey. And again, for the first 3 to 4 years, we were completely thinking of this as a product platform and had set it up as a social enterprise. And then gradually, like I said, the realization really came that in India, it's, like I said, it's an assisted service model that really works to reach the 900 million people. And that's how we started training women. I think most of the social enterprises, for-profits, non-profits in India, even financial, microfinance, which started off as a non-profit and then today is large banks, all of them have actually piggybacked on the wonderful work that the National Rural Livelihood Missions and State Rural Livelihood Missions and organizations have done through the years in building the women's self-help groups. And I think we've been a benefactor of that movement, because we've also been able to then train those women and give them livelihoods through the model. So I think a lot of, like I said, a combination of our journey at Haqdarshak has been always thinking platform first, and then who's going to really use it, and then kind of scaling the work. Today, we reach over 4 million people and are reaching from close to 200,000 new people per month. And it's, I think, largely due to the platform approach that we've had. And like I said, that I think that's that I see a lot in a lot of Indian social enterprises that are coming up, this combination of using technology at scale. Because, I mean, like I think they will said in the beginning that in India 4 million is a pilot. If you talk to a government officer in India, they'll say this is something we do in an afternoon, right? So they're not interested. How are you going to build the solutions? And that's why, again, thinking of any solution, again, like whether any kind of problem solution, today building on the government platforms, there are a lot of fantastic digital platforms that the government has built, right from data privacy, DigiLocker, or National Health Mission, covering all sectors. I think today when we are thinking of building solutions, building on those platforms is absolutely necessary, I feel, because eventually, as we all know, scale is with the government. And there is now in the last 4 to 5 years a huge push on building on open platforms. And I think that collaboration, that opportunity is there. And that's also been like part of our recent journey on pivoting to completely moving to those open systems and moving on the government systems. To give you a quick example, we gather a lot of data, right? For 4 million citizens, we have 60 data points each. And we were thinking, and this is a thing that came up a lot with the people who support us. So we are shifting everything to an account aggregator model. Essentially, what it says is the data is owned by the citizen, not by any organization. So you give consent, and no organization, whether it's Haqdarshak or any other organization, actually owns the citizen. This concept that I own a network, I own a citizen, is a very archaic kind of view. So I think the whole model present to us today is the citizen owns the data. In fact, citizens can make money off that data. With their consent, they can go to the market, and whether it's finance, FMCG, climate, any kind of solution, and participate in that journey. So again, that is something that today the platforms allow us to do.
Fantastic. I mean, it really, and I think what is really struck me when we were discussing yesterday was to say that, you know, bringing the focus back to the problem that you're trying to solve, and then deciding on the type of partners you want to come together to be able to solve it. This whole effort to bring government and private sector and technology together. I mean, I think is quite a unique experience. Thank you for sharing it. Sana, tell us about your journey. I know it's been a very unique one. A little bit about the work that you do, and how do collaboratives fit into that space.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with the problem, right? What is the problem? I have become a refugee from Syria after fleeing the Assad regime, as my father was forcibly disappeared by the Assad regime in 2013. And after revolting the Assad regime and that dictatorship and finding myself in what's known as refugee, I found that I'm actually more powerless, or I'm received as very powerless person, and I have no agency. So I found that the major problem when it comes to how we view refugees and forcibly displaced persons is that there has been a historic pattern of seeing this problem as a problem in the global south, where the global north is coming to save us, right? And when we look at the solutions that have been, solutions, quote, quote, that have been curated since then, since the 1951 Convention to protect refugees, we find out that all these solutions are literally no solutions. Food and shelter are no solutions for refugees. Don't give dignity, don't give rights, and don't give agency that would allow me to be here. And when you try to understand why, you find it's actually, there's an industrial complex in this sector, the refugee protection system. It's an industrial complex that literally exists because I exist. So why to empower me? And so I found this to be the biggest conflict of interest that's normalized in our sector. And when I try to understand why, and why people like me and others who are refugees from the global majority and still live in the global majority, global south, as we call it here, I call it global majority, is that why do we not have the resources that we need to serve our own communities while we're already doing it? And so if you look at the numbers, 30%, so $30 billion in the humanitarian sector goes to work on refugees issues. Out of this $30 billion, 0.01% goes to organizations that led by refugees themselves, led by the persons who experience this issue, who are the experts on this issue. And that stats by itself was for me like, if there's nothing else clear about the problem that we live in, this should say a lot. And that was during the pandemic when, at the same time, international organizations, majority of them evacuated their staff from the camps from where our communities live for safety reasons. But we don't leave. We don't evacuate our communities, and leave somewhere else. And yet we are doing our best, but we don't have the resources. So I've come together with other refugees from Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Uganda, and Colombia. And together we thought, what is that bold one solution that's global with different contexts could apply? And really the solution wasn't education, wasn't employment for refugees, wasn't even rights. The solution was that give people resources and they know what they need in their context. And then we tried to understand, well, why money is not getting to refugee-led groups and refugee-led organizations. And obviously, the reasons that we were able to analyze, many of them, we start with the racist colonial sector that we live in, and that the majority of the money actually doesn't go to refugee-led groups, because refugee-led groups could never, ever live up to the unbelievable standards and applications and the biased applications of grants and money. And so they end up going to the NGOs, and refugee-led groups would get like bits and pieces, as implementing partners, which keeps us beneficiaries, right? And so we're like, how can we dismantle that? How can we redistribute power and wealth back to the communities? And so we've created in this collaboration, South to South, the first ever global fund by refugees for refugees. And in that fund, we collect donor money and we redistribute it. And so in 2 years now, we've launched 2 years ago, and just in 2 years, we have unlocked directly through our fund $13 million to 22 refugee-led groups around the world. Why? Thank you. Thank you. I will talk more about it, but I just want to say we did that, legally compliant, trust-based, participatory grant making, while the sector and philanthropy keeps saying it's risky and it does not work. It's not. It takes will.
Thank you for sharing the journey and just bringing us back to the real problems on the ground. And what an amazing story. Thank you. Would love to know more about it, Sana, and we'll come back to it. Seema, going back to your journey, I just wanted to ask, if you could just outline for us. I mean, now that we've heard, the speakers, and also we've had sessions, and I know you have been involved in several approaches. What are the 3 elements that stand out for you as a success criteria for any effective collaboration? And how do you typically avoid the ends of that collaborative approach, I mean, both inertia and overload, to actually come to a space where the approach remains relevant, the approach remains, participatory? Just like to hear from you.
Sure. So I think we were discussing this in the previous session as well today, where Bridgespan brought together a survey of different collaboratives. In my opinion, it all boils down to really aligning around your objective. And that takes a lot of investment of time to align around the objective. Often what I find is that, when we want to promote collaboratives, I work in a philanthropy, and if we are wanting to make a grant to a collaborative, we'll get a proposal back which will write, all the activities that will be done. And very little effort is made to define what our objective is. And I think, when you try to align around the outcome that you care for and the objective that you will pursue, then the activities will follow naturally from there. So, aligning around the vision is one thing. Oftentimes we just assume that our vision is aligned because we all want to work on children's health, for example. That's not enough, actually. You really have to know the outcome that you're striving for. Can you quantify it? What is the outcome? No, you won't be responsible to deliver that outcome, but that is what our vision is, in quantified terms. This is what the change we would like to see in this decade. And then think through what our objective is. What are we trying to do in the time period that we are seeking the funds for? In the next 2 years, or is it 3 years, or is it 5 years? So that the partners are clear that this is how they will measure their success themselves. And so, in the other room we were also talking about monitoring and evaluation. That's not something you do to satisfy the donors, and if donors think that it is to satisfy themselves, of course not. Yes, there is a little bit of stewardship involved at the donor's end, and you're responsible to your board who is investing the money or whatever. Yes, but ultimately what you're looking for is the change, and the agents of change are the civil society actors whom you're funding, and those civil society actors have to themselves measure whether they are succeeding or not, and they can only measure that once they know their objective. And so where I've seen that there's been very powerful clarity around the objective statement that they want to pursue, the results have been pretty good. And I think there's also this artificial notion that many donors have, whether they are individuals or institutions, that this change must occur in this time period. The real world is not like that. Change takes time, and we have to be willing to acknowledge that as donors, and empowering the civil society. And one way to empower them is to help them to invest in building trust amongst the actors who will collaborate. So, and that is not only coming around the objective, also investing time, giving them the space, and telling them that, we are not going to hold you accountable for this metric or that metric, but that you decide how you will hold yourself accountable. How will you see whether change is happening or not? What are the signals of change that you'll watch out for? And if those signals are not coming, how will you be clear from the outset that you will change your approach to meet the objective that you're after? I mean, the donors don't do this. Oftentimes, civil society doesn't feel that the donor trusts, and so they just send you a bunch of activities that they will do. change doesn't happen basis those activities. They don't have the freedom to change the activity to reach the objective. The donors hold them totally accountable for approvals, for shifting one budget line and that budget line. And so sort of, I think, the alignment around objectives amongst the collaborative and between the collaborative and the donor, and if the donor consider themselves a part of that collaborative, even better. I think that's the starting point for success. And that framework has to be right and agreeable between the donor and the civil society.
Thank you so much. Very powerful, Seema. I think it just brings us back to the discussion earlier, and also, I think to have a common North Star for the collaboration to actually move forward towards, and also the acknowledgement that it's a shared journey, really. It's not a donor's journey or a grantee partner's journey. It is a shared journey to solve a problem that you think needs a solution. It's not something. And thank you for bringing that out for us. And a lot of times, this is something that we've been trying to test out at AVPN as well. There is a whole body of research that AVPN has also been doing, trying to look at, what would make collaboratives more powerful, more effective, and where does trust-based action come into that whole process. Because a big part of the journey is, putting in trust in each other going forward. Thank you so much. Aniket, I just wanted to come back to what you said and wanted to get your views in terms of, when you decide on a solution or when you are trying to define the nature of what needs to be done, how do you build in cultural elements to that whole process so that it remains relevant to the communities that you are trying to work with? Would love to get your own view of how the journey was for Haqdarshak, and how did you ensure that you had representation from the community as well in terms of delivering what you were trying to deliver?
I think the first acknowledgement was that we don't know what we are doing at all. We only know we have an intent, and we're willing to kind of put in the effort and probably the years in it. But yeah, I think all of us who started on this journey were very clear that we have absolutely no clue on the ground what it takes to get access to a pension or insurance. And I think because in our work, when we started off thinking that schemes is the problem, over the years we've realized identity is the problem. Right? When you say getting a government scheme is the easier part. In establishing your own identity within the system is the tough part. So if you've gone through a disaster in the recent times, anywhere in the world, now you're asking the same farmer who's just lost his or her house, who's lost they lost their farmland, and then they don't have documents to go to the government and prove that they own the land to get the benefit. So it is a lot of times that, so that realization really came with that mindset, and we've, that's the reason to always look for all our work from bottom up. So all our agents who are there are members of the community, even the teams. And there's been a lot of self-selection then, because we've not superimposed the kind of structures we want or the kind of people we want. And because the members, the solutions are coming from the community, and it's a very, very agile platform, so we are able to change it. So the wrapper is of a government scheme system, but we are working on climate in terms of farmers, getting them access to solar financing from the government, to working on getting people disability pensions and disability cards, to working on health insurance. So then the solutions are very community focused. So that's been really the thinking. And even today, we only, I think all our team members, barring a few who have done deep now research on government schemes, I think all of us say we are not experts on schemes. We can just figure out a solution as a partnership, because the partner organization who's working on that particular domain probably knows a lot more, who's from the community, and they have much more agency as well to be able to solve it.
Thank you so much. And I have had the privilege of working on projects that you have done with community-based organizations. And Aniket was telling me yesterday, most of your personnel also, the Haqdarshikas also are from the community.
Yeah, all of them. So all of them are women members of self-help groups. And now I think some of them are top 10 percentile in India, has started earning upwards of 50,000 rupees per month in places, and that's been consistent. So, and 50,000 rupees per month in India, rural India, is massive money. I think now the problem is they have more agency than their husbands at home. I mean, for them, socially, that's becoming the issue, right? You know, they are the ones owning the scooter, paying back the loan. So, so
which is a good problem to have.
Yes.
Okay, Sana, tell us more about, you just, I think, tickle the interest levels of the group here. Tell us more about your journey with collaboratives in terms of, how did you manage to find these organizations? How did you manage to, connect them in a way, because these are very trying circumstances that they are dealing with, that you are dealing with, and how do you make a collaborative really work in a situation like that, where the normal modes of communication are not there often. You don't have a face-to-face, interchange as such. How did you go about, cracking that challenge?
Yeah, I think it was very intentional. Every step was, there was so much thought and intentions into it, into how, and centering equity, I would say. The question that I was, so at Asylum Access, at my organization, we've convened this collaborative and we housed this fund. And from my end, it was, as I pursued those partnerships and I identified those partners, I had questions in my mind about shared values, and not just like, oh, we have shared, our value is equity, but like, how do you actually realize that in practice? Like, tell me more. And so trying to identify shared values. And then I think for us, it was very important, the shared experience, and that's, what has been said is exactly what I want to uplift, that clearly solutions and movements led by those most affected with the proximity to the problems tend to be impactful, successful, and they're actually ethical. Like, this is the right thing to do. And so when we've identified our partners and we went into these conversations and we start to work together, at every step I had to think about, well, how are we not, going back to the default in this partnership? Meaning, there's so much normalization, and that's the expectation of every single partner has to speak English for us to come together. And actually, no. One of our partners, absolutely 3 years partnership, successful, unlocked millions of dollars, does not speak a word of English. And so how do you create a fully bilingual coalition, collaborations? How do you think about, thank you. How do you think about, what I call really dismantling this white dominant professional culture that's like meetings have to be in certain times, deadlines, and the length, and you come into the meeting and there's that agenda. There's no room for me and you to get to know each other with our cultural differences, with our traumas, with our pains, because that's what lived experience comes with as well, not just expertise, pain and trauma. So how do we uphold and create space for all of this? Because this, if we do that and we build the relationship, and that's what we do culturally in the South. We don't just go to someone's home and be like, let's talk business. We eat and we drink tea and we chat and we do all of this, and eventually like business happens. And I wanted to bring this into this collaborative and not to be pressured with urgency and time and all of those things and be like, no, let's I don't know how to create space for this, but there are facilitators who do. So let's bring the facilitators and the expertise into the meeting that would help us, for you to come as you are. For us to build a partnership that's actually informed by the languages, the cultural differences, the trauma experiences, and the expertise of the people. And so factoring time, factoring language and interpretation. So we have interpretation in every single meeting for every single document, and that's expensive. But that's a priority, and if it's a priority, you add it to the budget and the donor will approve it. And you fight for it. And I think one of the most important things that we have done is that we brought donors along with us on this journey, and they have changed. The money that we distributed is not coming from the sky. We've brought philanthropists. We've brought, with us, our initial funding came from Lover for Change through an award we won, the $10 million. But Hilton came along, OSF came along, Porticus came along, Lemonade, and Blaustein Foundations, and many other individuals have come along, and we've done with them the journey of like, no, this application is not going to work this way. We want to fund organizations that are unregistered, because the refugees cannot exist legally to start with, and that's safe, and there are ways to do it, and we've navigated how we've done it. The other thing I want to say to a successful collaborative is documentation and agreements. Decision making, it's important. How do you do shared decision making, right? And this is what happens because conflict starts when there is money, especially for communities that really have been deprived from resources. And so how do we talk about transparency in budgeting? What does it mean to co-design and co-lead? What does it mean to have the budgets open books? And we've come together, and again, we brought the expertise to the room when we did not have them, and we've designed, for example, a model, a tool that we use to be able to make shared decisions together, like we call them gradients of agreements. And we never ever move on any decision without making sure that we're all in the spectrum of like, yes, I can live with this, let's move forward. Or no, I cannot live with that, I'm gonna veto this, and we create more space for discussion. And so that intentionality is really what helps in navigating conflict in the future, and has helped us in navigating conflict and making sure that we are sustainable. You know, movements do break, and we have issues, and you know, I think there's so much pressure and expectations of always like community and civil society, because there is that notion of like corruption and risk. The moment there's a mistake happen, be like, yeah, see, they're not ready for that. And we want to normalize that. Yeah, of course we're not ready for that. You know, we have not been empowered. We have not been have had the space and the resources for that. But at the same time, we're going to do everything in our capacity to ensure that we have tools and resources to address conflict when conflict arises, because conflicts do arise.
Amazing stories, really. I mean, there is just so much there to say that, you know, collaboration is not about all of us agreeing on one particular thing. There is a spectrum. And as long as we move in that spectrum, it makes so much more richness that comes through as such. I know Akshay has been showing me 10 minutes card and a 5 minutes card. So I wish this conversation continued for longer, really. But I do want to, you know, throw it open to the group here for one or two questions. And the speakers are going to be there for most part of the day. And so you will have a chance to speak to them. But anything that you would like to, you know, really, really urgent, you want to speak to, you know, a question, would love to hear your thoughts. Yes.
I'm so sorry. I just want to say it's a brilliant, brilliant panel, and I loved all three of your experiences. I took so many notes. I don't normally take notes. But Sana said something that particularly spoke to my heart, which is people often view us as the beneficiaries, and how do we flip that around? And I wanted to ask that just because I think India and the global south in general is a very young country, a very young region. There are so many youth leaders out there. I myself am a 21-year-old social entrepreneur. I've been running my social enterprise for 8 years. I started when I was 13. And when we started, people said I was too young, we were too young. 8 years later, we've worked with 50,000 people, we've worked with governments, we've worked with ministries, we've scaled to different countries, and people still say we're too young. And I don't just see this as a problem for myself, but many youth leaders, especially in India, when I go and meet them and we have coffee and we talk, one of the things that we often talk about is there's a lot of support from organizations to get us started, to help the youth get empowered. But once we're already empowered, it is really hard to get to the next level, and it's really hard to scale because people don't take us seriously as people running the organizations and not the beneficiaries. So I would love to hear how you flip the script on that, and your advice for all of us who have been doing things already, have had a track record, but still have biases against us when we're talking to funders, when we're talking to partners, when we're talking to people who we know we can do them right, but they just maybe don't believe in that right off the bat. So would love to hear your thoughts.
One more question, and then I'll ask the panelists to respond, if there is any. I don't. Yes, please.
Hello. This panel is very informative about what I wanted to hear, and I appreciate that. but pardon me if I don't remember your names well. And I want to tell you I'm from Assam, India, but I live here. After my retirement, I started working with the farmers to cultivate lemongrass oil. And also, I have to deal with a lot of farmers. You have mentioned about farmers, how to deal with them. They don't have some certificates and all that. We have gone through that process. But challenge is, many a times, they don't believe, they don't have the trust, because they think I'm from US, I'm here to make money. But in fact, it's the other way around. And also, one of the things is we're talking about environment. There's a lot of, India has a lot of rules and regulation. In Assam, this is the worst affected area for global warming. And what is happening there? Population is increasing, and the deforestation. There's rules and regulation, don't cut the trees, but people cut. What I do, cultivation, is about 26 kilometers. I go from one place, and both sides, the hills and big trees were there. They're all cut, and they're replanting the betel nut. Betel nut causes, as you know, cancer causing, and government is proposing for 11 more cancer hospitals there. Sorry? Oh, okay. And also another thing is that global warming. I am also working with IIT Guwahati to reduce the methane production in cattle. And we found that some of the essential oil, that if you mix with the feed, it reduces the. So we are working on that. Within 6 months, we will have an answer whether it works really well or not. Thank you. My question didn't come, right? My question is, how do you work with when the people don't follow the rules in India? Like deforestation is happening. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, sir. I think we need a bigger conversation around, how do you work, when the people are not following rules. But I just would like to hand it over to Sana for the response. And then.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question, and congratulations on what you and your peers have done. And yeah, it's not over. That's the thing. I hear you, and I feel like I am at this phase in our collaborative, where we proved ourselves. Here's the concept proof. We can do something. Why are you not scaling with us? Why are you not investing more of us? And that is literally at that point where we at. And I think the realization is that, to undo those defaults and those systems of oppression, it takes so much time to undo this misperception about who youth are and who refugees are and any other minorities and oppressed communities are. It takes so much time. So just remembering being patient and remembering that helps. The other thing is that what helps us really being rooted in our partnership and in the communities. And I think one of the things that really now we're looking into the role of partners and allies who are not refugees. And I would say this is what has been really helpful for us is we've been uplifted by many partners and donors and others who obviously they are not refugees, but they really believe in us. And we're telling them please work with us to bring others along, because it's also exhausting that it's on us all the time to bring everyone along. And it's amazing when you find those internal champions or external champions, and you're cheerleaders, and work with them and build those partnerships. And it's there actually, that's how you exercise true allyship. And real allyship is that you bring your network, you bring your privilege and leverage into this partnership. And that's because people ask is if solutions has to be led by refugees, what's my role? I'm exactly, that's your role, to uplift our leadership, to center our leadership, to share your network with us, to move with us on this and bring others along. So I found this to be really one of important techniques at this point to go into the next level. I hope that's helpful. I'm sure others have many thoughts.
Thank you so much. This has indeed been a very, very interesting panel, and I have learned a lot as well. I will not go into concluding with specific takeaways because there's just been so much. So just with a big thanks to each of you. Thank you, Sana. Thank you, Aniket. And thank you, Seema, for being part of it, sharing your journeys together. Look forward to staying in connect.